Welcome back to episode 3 of A Psalm of Flesh and Change. You are once again playing our intrepid custodians, now beginning to investigate your second of 3 assignments. Rhyme sends her apologies as she's feeling a bit knackered, it sounds like, so I hope she feels better and we'll continue on without her. So I think Nora Kane will take a bit of a back seat this episode. So just as a quick recap, when we left off, 3 of you had taken the team's van and you were driving to the miraculous clinic of the Bleeding Witness, which is, it sounds like, an old abandoned hospital that's been repopulated by a kind of collective of fringe and illegal healing faiths and other strange cults that it seems are trying to get the hospital back up and running again, albeit illegally. And so you've been tasked with going out there in the guise of inspectors and trying to see, are there any dangerous gods involved with this hospital? Is there anything happening at the clinic that shouldn't be? And ultimately making a call on, should it continue to keep running or not? In the meantime, though, Frank Idle, servant of the Helping Hand, remained behind in the small seaside town of Ward, which is currently being plagued by an angel that appears to be related to time or time's passage, called the Minute Man. He spent a bit of time investigating around the town, and ultimately, after a night spent in a charming local B&B, Frank decided that he was going to go and commune with the Minuteman, or the god controlling the Minuteman. And to that end, David, if I have it right, you headed out to the old pier at the very end of Mara Ward and began assembling this very cool-sounding hemispherical device, a kind of time Ouija board with a drop of your own blood to attempt to summon some kind of conversation with this god. And before we leap back in, I'd just like to check one thing, because I think it would be very cool to help us paint the scene. As Frank was going around collecting clocks from the townsfolk, do you see them as having maybe come down to follow him and watch him? Or have you picked the pier because you think actually no one is looking right now? This is very much a secluded place away from anyone.
Yeah, I think I think Frank was pretty ambiguous about what he was going to use the clocks for. So I don't think this place strikes me as a town of people who are, for the most part, trying to keep their heads down. And so I think, especially with Frank, doing something for them, doing some kind of task, I think he's allayed suspicion from individuals in the town in his clock collecting escapades. And I think he chose this spot because of its temporal significance to the town. Like, after speaking with the owner of the bread and breakfast and with the other townsfolk, I think it's been talked about how, like, the pier was kind of central to the town coming up. And so I think he was trying to find a place that has seen a great deal of change due to the temporal effects happening here, because he's hoping that will be kind of like a decent locus to try to contact whatever this force is that's been affecting things.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, so I'm imagining, very much the secluded beach in front of you, waves washing up on the polluted shoreline. Maybe the only witness here is a seagull observing you skeptically as it pecks at some old discarded bits of trash. I absolutely love that. Okay, so you rolled to commune and you rolled a mixed success.
Yes.
So I think let's start with the good news first, and we can do the bad news in a bit. I'm imagining very much that these clocks are kind of shaking and shuddering, obviously beginning to tick faster and faster, spinning round and round. And just as you watch, an eerie, faint, almost lime green neon glow suffuses the pier all around you. And as you look up at that skeptical seagull, you watch as the feathers just flake away, and before you for an instant is the merest skeletal fossil of the bird still there, imprinted upon the shoreline before it vanishes. And as Frank looks around, the white chalk cliffs of the town themselves begin to shudder and shake, moving backwards. Or then as you blink, no, maybe moving forwards. Perhaps they're eroding away, perhaps they're coming back into an earlier formation. You look around, the old ruined towns for a moment seem to become whole and beautiful, freshly painted again. And all at once you seem to be seeing both the past and the future of Mara Ward. And I would love everyone to help me paint the scene here. As David kind of indicated, What particularly important milestones in Mara Ward's history might become visible to Frank here? So it could be something from the distant past, could be something from the recent past, could even be an event that's yet to happen.
I think on the edge of the cliff, there used to be, I think, as symbolic of Mara Ward's fall, the most prominent mansion of the town sat upon the cliff edge, and almost as a sign of its erosion, it had fallen into the cliff many years back, and Frank sees the cliff uncarving and reconstructing itself, and gradually, bit by bit, as it would have slowly fallen and parts of it fallen off the cliff until nothing was left, it slowly reconstructs itself until there's this old mansion house sort of jutting out where there was previously just open air.
I think there is a glimpse of the future to come, where the highest point in Malrord, this similar rocky promontory that James just described, there is this strange sense of being underwater as this vision of a massive surge of the oceans that eventually crests across these cliff sides, a massive tidal wave, a tsunami that sweeps, crushing rock and dragging bits of its people and its township with it into the waves. But this high point, this large ridge along the cliffs, is this haven, and almost in just like you're blinking to see the transition of time, there is this rapidly erected, so quickly that it's almost a blur, statue that is eventually one day built here that commemorates the destruction of the town in this massive storm and the brave people who managed to save as many lives as they could by seeking shelter atop this rocky ridge. But then it all just kind of like fades and bleeds back to the normal glimpse of the distant future.
I think as well, we see a colossal 3-masted wooden ship coming in from the sea towards the pier area. It's, adorned beautifully with like, gold and bronze inlaid scrollwork along the sides and edges. It is painted along its body. There's a beautifully ornate, figurehead at the front of the ship. And as it approaches, bits of the paint begin to flake away, bits of the boards collapse and rot. One of the masts collapses under its own weight, and slowly as it approaches the dock, the ship just falls apart into pieces and then sinks below the waves.
I love all those so much. Thank you. I could have gone full kids on bikes there and just asked you all to keep filling in these little moments because I love those. Absolutely. Frank sees, yes, the massive storm transfiguring into the statue commemorating it, this wooden ship just being torn away by the ravages of time, and this ancient mansion coming back to life. And as you stand there, Frank, seeing all of these moments somehow all at once at the same time, like different photo negatives being laid on top of each other, you begin to see that the landscape is shifting yet again. The windows in this mansion, as they reform, start to look a little bit like eyes. The cliff, that crevice that Alex mentioned, almost just kind of breaks open as if it's a grinning mouth. And that ship itself seems for a moment to be swallowed up by the gaping maw of a pair of jaws. Something looks out at you from the past, present, and future of Mara Ward, and it speaks. And it speaks in a voice that seems to be many different things at once. The croak of an old man, the whisper of a young child, and the voice of a sage adult. And it just says, "We see you, little pilgrim." And as it speaks, the different voices echo in past and future. "We saw you, little pilgrim. We will see you, little pilgrim."
Oh, this is actually working. I see you two there. Well, I'll just be frank with you. That's sorry, that's a little joke I like to tell people. Obviously, you've got a really impressive thing going on here, and I just wanted to ask you. I came here, Pilgrim, yes, Frank Idle, at your service. I wanted to ask: is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything you need here? Is there anything that someone such as myself could help you see to the end? Is there anything you require?
Silence for a moment, and then the voice just says, "We have all we need. We had all we needed. We will have all we will need."
I think Frank sits with that for a second. Is that true? I'm sorry. I don't mean no disrespect by any of this. I swear to you by my own warm beating heart. You're a god of some kind or related to one. Even I can tell something such as that. And you need things. That's it's in your nature to need something from us. We can do something for you. I saw a fellow the other night being chased along the streets by you or your representative, and it sure seemed like you needed something from him. I'm just wondering if there's anything I can do to elevate your experience here, or otherwise satisfy you at this time.
I think a very, very long silence. It would be very much an extraordinary thing for Frank Idle to dumbfound what is very possibly a god, but it may well be happening. And then the windows of the mansion just kind of crack and break a bit, forming a frown in the eyes. And the voice says, "We have watched you. We will watch you. We watch you. You are one of Time's servants, little pilgrim. When you see a room that is dirty, you clean it. When you see a table untidied, you make it neat. You need these things, do you not? You need the dirty room, the untidy table. You feed upon them."
Well, it's rather unsanitary to feed upon a dirty table. But I think I gather your meaning.
There are many dirty tables here in Mara Ward, and many untidy, broken rooms. This is a rich hunting ground for us both, and we are gracious enough to share. You may share in our hunting ground, Frank Idle.
I'm honored, I think. Are there other places to hunt in these parts? I just know the people around here are right distressed by, I think, the whole being hunted activity. As one who needs something to another who needs their own set of things, seeming like sometimes we overlap in that matter. Is there any other place where we could see our needs met other than this here seaside community?
You need not pity them, little pilgrim. You are one who uses time well, efficiently, to your purpose. This is a place of wasted time, lost dreams and hopes, and yet it will limp on for as long as it can. And for as long as it limps on, we will be here to feed upon wasted seconds, wasted minutes, empty hours.
I think Frank has blushed. He's flushed slightly at being told that he spends his time well, and he's like, "Now, I'm still far too idle to my core. That's my name for a reason, but I think I've come to understand a little better than I did, maybe more than I should. Is there anything I can do for you?
You are already doing it, Frank Idle. You have already done it. You will already do it. Live. Even for one such as yourself, there are wasted moments, wasted seconds, wasted opportunities. We will be here, and we will feed upon you, Frank Idle, gratefully and happily.
Well then, perhaps if my wasted moments can become nourishment, they aren't so wasted after all.
I think you get a definite kind of almost the waves cresting up as if to crush the ship in what appears to be almost a smile. Malevolent, but a little sympathetic.
Yeah, I think Frank, who's sort of been leaning over, having his hands above these clocks, his fingers still dripping a bit with his own blood from marking the various runes and letters and numbers. I think he kind of steps back, reaches into his pocket, pulls out a handkerchief, wipes off of his hands, and gives a very deep, curt bow before this presence that has so gratefully heeded his call at this time.
Very nice. I think perhaps before the vision fades, you just hear the whispers of whatever this voice is that's speaking to you out of time, and it simply says, "We are grateful to have spoken with you, Frank Idle. We shall bestow upon you a blessing." And there's just maybe a hint of many different voices raised in different kinds of laughter on the wind before old Mauer Ward, future Mauer Ward, ancient Mauer Ward, all of it fades back, and you are standing once more in front of a pile of what I'm afraid are very much broken clocks upon the pier, alone, and a very sullen-looking seagull is watching you. So I think we are. James mentioned in the chat, one of Time's servants is a great condition name, and if you're happy with it, David, I think that's a perfect one, because I think what Frank is going to find as he kind of stares down at his hand is that the effects of time, he is beginning to have visions of his past and in particular his future intermittently as he walks through the town. So he just might see his hand looking very aged and withered for a second. As he encounters other side characters in town again, he might get glimpses of their grisly demises. So he can no longer quite trust his senses. But I think what I'd also like to propose, if we're up for it, is I love that you went for this, so I want to make sure it gets like a proper positive reward. So I'd say if there are 2 clues that you want to take out of that, please do. Then that could be either the conversation or one of those wonderful glimpses of the past that we got. If you can only think of one, I'll happily give you something that maybe Frank notices now once the visions have faded.
Yeah, I mean, one I loved was, as a clue, is this town is a feeding ground for this god. I think that makes for a very, it's a clue that adds more context the deeper you dig into it, which I love. And then I actually kind of I love the imagery of the seagull so much. Of this seagull going from watching idly to fossilized and then back again. I like that as a clue. That one I like because it's obscure, and the other one I like because it suits the narrative. But
awesome. All right, so very strange seagull, and that it's a feeding ground for the god. Awesome. All right, let's take a quick leap across to our other gang of intrepid custodians, who are even now roaring, Nora, as always, driving very fast towards the miraculous clinic of the Bleeding Witness. And I should say, of course, that maybe rumors have reached all of you about this strange clinic built around fringe faiths that are maybe trying things that ordinary hospitals and legal faiths wouldn't. So there's a question for each of you to kick this assignment off, which is, what breakthrough medical advances and miraculous cures are rumored to be performed at the clinic? So what breakthrough medical advances and miraculous cures are rumored to be performed at the clinic?
Supposedly there are advances being made in the areas of like limb regrowth. The idea that people have been experimenting with possible ways that similar to like lizards, that human beings can regrow entirely missing limbs. And there's even speculation that people who may have had birth deformities and may never have had those limbs to begin with can actually even have fully grown limbs suited to them. Now, it's all very hearsay, but there's a lot of stuff being spoken about in the domain of like, you know, flesh regrowth and similar divinities that can apply to this.
I think a very common side effect of the touch of a god, be it hallowing or be it just an accidental, you know, accident, and a divine accident, is becoming fused with something that is not flesh. So a wall, something made of metal, your pen, your seat, you know, it's a thing. It happens a lot in the Peninsula. And there's a rumor that they figured out how to separate people from the things they've been fused to. Now, it might not be perfect. You know, if they were separated to a chair, their flesh might still look like a chair and the chair might look like flesh. But, you know, it's an innovation.
I think as well, there's a rumor going around that they've gotten so good at helping patients who've lost memories or lost experiences at recovering those, that going even beyond recovering, you know, lost memories from childhood, or maybe those lost due to an accident of some kind, they can even help you recover memories of your past lives.
These are all incredible. Thank you. Yeah, these are indeed some of the rumors you've heard about. Limb regrowth, fixing people who've got fused to objects, and memory recovery, even to the extent of it affecting your past lives. Awesome. I think so. We said it was late afternoon by the time we saw Frank again. So I imagine it might be around the same kind of time, perhaps the sun just beginning to set crimson and angry overhead as you pull into the car park of the Miraculous Clinic. So I imagine, Vitria, the first thing you would notice, the old abandoned hospital itself, this very grand and somber, extremely brutalist building, which, depending on Vitria's philosophy of architecture, may or may not be a good thing. And under the broken windows, you can see this kind of kitsch but very human revival has taken place. Fairy lights have been strung up, colorful and bright, all around the walls. There are a variety of rows of colorful tents bearing the sigils of different faiths, all out in the car park. Honestly, small crowds. This place is clearly beginning to attract a lot of attention. So you can see that there are attendants on hand who are guiding the waiting line in towards the clinic entrance. And there are small clusters of traveling preachers and clinic consultants who are just moving around through the visitors, speaking to them, making little notes on their pads, trying to get a sense of who exactly might need help here and in what order to treat them. So the paint the scene question out here in the parking lot is, what signs of hope do you see in the visitors out in the car park who are queuing up for treatment? And what miraculous cures and procedures are being advertised out here? So what cures and procedures are being advertised out here, and what signs of hope do you see in the visitors?
There is a advertisement for a treatment for a condition known as sanctified lung, which is very commonly occurring in coal miners. These partial sanctification of body parts from breathing in coal dust deep in these mines. There are people here who are clearly from backgrounds working in coal mines, very like bulky soot streaked people who breathe laboriously as if they are in pain or possibly breathing with too many lungs or too few lungs. Hard to say, but they seem very giddy, and their breathing is calm and steady, like they are prepared to face this and return to normalcy.
I think I don't know what the name of it is, but we're in an A&E, there's that circular bit where the ambulances stop right in front of the door. And there used to be in the middle of that concourse like a statue, which has been, removed or something. But instead, some sector or other has pulled down the green, medical cross from the roof of the building and set it up there. And it's just glowing with it's neon and it's just glowing with this blinding green light, and there's sort of a congregation of people basking in the green glow of the sort of flickering, buzzing. It's quite large. It's probably about almost like 8 feet tall, this thing, and it's being pulled down, and it's just everyone's basking in it.
Could you read the prompt one more time? I want to make sure I got it right.
Of course. So the prompt is, what signs of hope do you see in the visitors awaiting treatment, and or what miraculous cures and procedures are being advertised by the clinic?
Yeah, I think I'll also do a sign of hope. I think that there's not disorder. I think that people are waiting in lines. People are sitting, being patient. People might be checking in about, making sure that they're in some queue of some kind, but there is a degree of trust here in this institution by the people that is maybe surprising.
Love all those. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we're definitely getting the measure of this place. As the three of you step out of your van, you do see that there is someone who seems to be waiting to greet you. Very tall, wearing a garish pastel suit and tie, an inferno of wild red hair, blue-tinted eyeglasses. I think they're dressed very much in a non-binary style, and they would definitely go by they, them pronouns. And as you step out of the van, they rush up to you and say, I'm guessing you are not here for clinical purposes. Yes, you're here to make an inspection of the clinic?
Dr. Nim has already pulled out the credentials that the Bureau provided us with and is like holding them out for inspection and just nodding.
And I think Vitria turns and pulls out this quite a big scroll from her tube of scrolls and opens it up and says, "Unfortunately, I am here as well as a representative of the Slag King's faith, and we have reason to believe that this building has contracted," and she makes a sign on her chest, "the concrete rot. Starts in the sublevels and it rises like a blight. I must inspect this building. I must find it. And then, only then, can we bring in a team to fill in the sublevels with the purifying power of liquid concrete." And
Nim is like furrowing his brow from the side and just casting a slight side glance at Vitria, like, what the hell are you doing? But otherwise just keeps his eyes straight forward.
It's a distraction, Doctor.
I mean, give me, there's not much at risk here, so I think just give me an information move at this point.
I was thinking for my item, I was going to use, because I have like essentially a set of surveyor's equipment. So I'll get out my fancy, set square and my laser pen and my scroll, and I'll look very official. I'll wear my hat, but I'm not going to use it for the role. But basically, yeah, I'm gonna mark my all-purpose surveyor's toolkit. And I guess this
Presence,
feels like
yeah.
presence, would it be? Yeah. Yeah, I'll roll with presence with advantage and see if anyone will tell me anything. I think that's a +0 for me. Oh, that's not bad. That's an 11.
Okay. I think with an 11, yeah, that's obviously Phineas Gland is going to be very impressed. Can I ask, I can give you a clue now, or we can hold your clue basically if you want to go snoop around in the basement later on, it could be that we can give you an advantage on a roll down there, or how do you want to play this one?
I feel like given I've mentioned the sub-levels, perhaps it would bring something to mind. So I guess I'd rather, I think maybe it seems in context like a good one.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we'll hold that, but you'll get a reward later on if you go and snoop around in those sub-levels. But I think in the meantime, Phineas, who was already going to absolutely welcome Dr. Harrow as an expected inspector, now just looks back and forth between the two of you and goes, "Oh, so you carpool then? That's nice. That saves on, it's environmentally good." Well, yes. Thank you for coming, Mr. Inspector. We're thrilled to have you here. We have been trying our best here at the Bleeding Witness to just honestly help these good folks. I know we're a bit rough and ready, but there hasn't been a hospital running in these parts for well over a decade now. The nearest one is close to 100 miles away. People were dying before they could get there. So I understand there could be some kind of problems for us maybe, and I'm just hoping that if we're as transparent as possible, if we give you the tour, you'll see that what we're doing here really is helping people.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing your establishments. There are some concerns, as you can imagine, but I have an open mind for these sorts of endeavors. And with my background, I am most intrigued to dive deeper into the details. So wherever you wish to lead, I am happy to follow.
Of course, and just so I understand, obviously I understand that you also have a Slag King investigation of the sub-levels that you wish to run, Madame. How long do you think this needs to take? If you're going to be staying overnight, I can make sure we have some beds up in the ward for you.
I don't mean to be insulting, but there was a reason why this structure was condemned. I'm not sure I'd care to spend a night under this roof. Not in an inhospitable way, you see. I'm just simply concerned that this entire building will collapse in on its own footprint at any moment.
As for myself, I will not be able to speak to my intentions until I have received the tour. But after that, I will happily let you know about if I intend to be staying here overnight. But I'm happy to make other accommodations work.
Of course, that sounds sensible. And ma'am, whatever your investigation turns up with regards to this concrete rot you speak of, I only ask that you please give us some notice on any decision to be made. We have a lot of vulnerable people. If there really is a risk of the building coming down, they do deserve to know, but moving them to another place of shelter is going to be difficult if no one's willing to provide that for them.
I shall make a good, fair, and proper count, and only then will the great eyes of the Slag King be turned on the floors of this building, and any flaws will be revealed.
Very nice. All right, I think absolutely Phineas Glan just turns and says, well, if you'll follow me, and of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And lead you past these crowds, kind of some of the people who are queuing, I imagine, particularly those who are still coughing from sanctified lung, just look at you with a little glare of, oh, why do they get to push in through the queue? Why do they get to go through as you go past through the double doors into the clinic?
As we're falling in step behind Phineas, Nim leans over to Vitria a little bit and whispers, "Is concrete rot a real thing?"
I wish I'd made it up, Doctor, but I'm afraid it's not. I don't know whether there is rot or not, but my reasoning is that if they're hiding anything, it's going to be down in the sub-levels. So you're better qualified to tell if there's any malpractice, and I can tell what's hidden deep below this building.
Indeed, I would be most interested in talking with you about concrete rot at another time. I have never heard of it, but it sounds most unusual. Another time, though. We have work to do.
Yes, divide and conquer, Doctor.
Divide and conquer.
Huh. He laughs mirthlessly as if that was some kind of funny joke to him.
Very nice. We're going to take a moment just as you two head in, Nora remaining behind in the van. I imagine you two are both going to want to investigate the clinic, but just so it's in play, I'll introduce assignment number 3. And I'd love to have another go with another homebrew one that you may not be familiar with. So I think as Nora is tuning the radio, presumably I'm going to take a guess for some of her favorite musicals. The radio does just chirps and squeals after a moment, and we hear a very faint, static-filled voice pleading, "Please, God, please, there's been a murder. There's been a terrible murder. Can anyone hear me? Radio's out. Our coordinates." And Nora does indeed manage to scribble down a set of coordinates. So assignment number 3 that is entering play is called Winter's Spite. And this one's a bit of a murder mystery. So high in the gloomy peaks of the White Fingers stands Vernon's Lodge, a luxurious 5-star mountain hotel and ski resort for the ultra-wealthy of the peninsula. In this hotel, adjudicator Esphalt Groan has gathered a small group of friends, celebrities, politicians, and general hangers-on for his 50th birthday party in this magnificent venue. Something has gone horribly wrong. The corpse of adjudicator Groan now stands in the center of the hotel's sumptuous ballroom, transfigured into a horrifying ice sculpture by an unexpected intruder, a murderous saint of snow and ice. Now the blizzard and the saint that still stalks outside has blocked off all hope of escape, and the guests and staff are on the radio, desperately waiting to be rescued. So that is in play should you choose, or next session, anyone want to go and investigate that one. However, right back to the two of you now entering the main lobby of the Miraculous Clinic of the Bleeding Witness. I'm imagining it's very quiet, very hushed, cavernous space. It's dimly lit by the dirty ceiling windows. Lots of the light bulbs in this place still not replaced. Maybe there's some same fairy lights strung across the walls to try and give a bit of warmth to the space. Spindly tropical plants are dying slowly in tacky pink and green pots, and hunched blanketed figures droop upon rows of cushioned chairs, waiting for their turn to come. The air is hushed. You can just see that there's a curved receptionist desk where a phone is ringing. Just and bizarrely, as you watch, the receptionist just turns towards it. She nods gently and sympathetically towards the ringing phone and says, "Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers." And as if seeing you spot this, Phineas Glan just kind of goes, "So we're a broad church here. We have a number of healing faiths. Some are contributing more than others, but we all make an effort and we all try and do our best for these people. Assigning patients to the correct faith is, of course, an important part of the treatment, and that's what me and my team as greeters manage." Any questions so far?
I think my colleague is more interested in what you cure, and I'm more interested in preventing your patients from contracting additional ailments.
Yes. With that in mind, before we get into anything regarding the procedures here, my first line of inquiry is about your patients themselves. I just would like to, do you have a waiting room here? How do you manage the inflow of patients? I'd like to investigate or survey that aspect first, just to make sure that people are being efficiently handled.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the waiting room here in the lobby,
Oh,
as you
very
can
good,
see.
very good.
People do sometimes need to wait for a while, depending on what's happening elsewhere in the clinic. We're trying our best. More staff would certainly help. If you wish to speak to any patient, and Phineas gestures towards some of these hunched, blanketed figures on various chairs, please be my guest. As for you, Mom, I'm certain we can accommodate you. Ignatius, and I think Vitria, right behind you, you have a sudden sense of the sun being blotted out. As you turn, there is an enormous man, knotted muscle, just kind of writhing like worms underneath soiled overalls, and he just kind of has a shovel raised to his shoulder. As he stares down at you, he grinds his teeth somewhat unpleasantly at the sight of you and says, "What's this then? They don't look ready to be buried." Phineas says, "Ignatius, these are two inspectors from the government, so please be nice to them. I didn't catch your name, madam."
Vitria Stahl.
Miss Stahl here would like to take an inspection of the sub-levels. Since we're all rather short-handed here, I wonder if you could help out. And Ignatius just says, "My job's burying them, not doing tours, not doing guides, not any of this." Ignatius says, "Yes, but we're all trying to help here, aren't we, Ignatius? So maybe you could just take one for the team here." And Ignatius goes, "All right, I'll show her. But if she gets lost in the dark down there, that's not my problem." Ignatius kind of looks at you, Vitria, and just sort of, "All right, you want to see the sub-basements? Come on, I'll show you."
Vitria is already a bit nervous because she's noticed that the hospital's been made with Slag King light, which is autoclaved aerated concrete that's like 50% air. And the campaign was that the rest of it was filled with the spirit of the Slag King, but it's just holes, and she can see cracks already. So they've only gone into the entrance hallway, and it's already looking pretty dire.
I'm imagining this is exactly the kind of world where probably the Slag King would at some point have had a god of asbestos in the pantheon, right? Everyone loves a bit of asbestos in your walls.
What? Are you referring to sacred asbestos, the handmaiden of the Slag King?
The handmaiden asbestos, yes. Awesome. So you're a little bit nervous, but do you still wish to follow this rather gloomy gravedigger down into the vaults of the hotel, of the hospital?
I have my hat, so if the ceiling breaks, I will be protected.
Awesome. Okay, I think Ignatius kind of just still hocking the spade behind him, turns and moves through the lobby, pushing aside a set of double doors, not waiting for you at all, just assuming that you're following after him, moving at his own thunderous pace. Dr. Nim, meanwhile, are you going to be talking to any of the patients? You can definitely spot a couple of people here in the lobby that look like they might be receptive to a conversation.
Sure, why not? Yeah. Nim's eyes survey the lobby and mostly just take in the details of how things are being managed and the general vibe of people, but spotting that there are some who seem receptive to conversation, he will walk over to them, politely sit across from them if there's a chair. And what time of day is it?
I think we said it's getting close to sunset now.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Nim Hallow. I am with the government. Is it all right if I ask you some questions?
Just across from you where you've sat down, there is a rather thin-looking man in a hospital gown and non-slip socks. He's got one of those rolling IVs next to him, salt and pepper beard and quite long hair. The description rather beautifully says, "Locks grown wild like agitated clouds." That is Gabriel's description. I think that's quite beautiful. Well done, Gabriel. This man, the reason this man has got Dr. Nim's attention, I suspect, is because in hospitals or pediatricians, sometimes patients might get a cute little badge to signify that they've been a brave kid. I imagine because there are so many faiths in this place, you can get a different one for a different faith that's treated you. And this man has dozens. This is clearly a repeat patient. And he kind of looks at you quite proudly and says, "Oh, no, not at all. We all have to wait here, don't we? So, yeah, go ahead. What kind of questions do you want to ask me?"
Do you mind if I ask your name, sir?
Garth Lumby, pleasure to meet you.
Garth Lumby, very nice to meet you. Have you been treated here before?
Oh, got the badges, don't I? Oh, I've been here, 12, 13 times now. This is 13th time, 13th time's the charm.
And are you attempting to be admitted again or receiving some sort of a temporary treatment? What brings you here today?
Well, first things first, I saw the phantom limb about this finger I lost in a thresh when I was young. And then I went to see Memento Mary. She's the goddess they have of memory recall here. She's very good. I found out a bunch of stuff about my past lives. Did you know I used to be a coal miner?
Is that so?
And that's why I've got sanctified lung. So then I had to come here and deal with the sanctified lung. And then after all that was done, I'm trying to remember what the hell the third thing was. You'll never guess this, but I managed to get a light bulb fused to me. Don't ask where, but the skin distiller. They sorted me right out. So I went through all of that. I had such a good time. And now, wouldn't you know it, I get a bit of a sniffle. So I thought I'd just come back here, get them to check me out and make sure I'm doing all right.
And these treatments have been good. You have no ill effects. You have had nothing but positive experiences.
Yeah, of course. You know, I'm not well yet, but then who amongst us is well? And he kind of gestures to the madness of the lobby for a second.
Huh.
I got a way to go, but I'm just doing what's best for me. And you know, because I've been around here for a while, right? I can help out some of the others, the new patients, them that can't get around as well as me. So you know, I come here and I try and help out. That's what this whole place is about, right? Doing our bit for the community.
Indeed. Well, thank you for answering. He like extends like a little card over to Garth and says, if you have any complaints or wish to speak of anything further, you can reach this office. We are making sure that this place is operating as efficiently within bounds. But otherwise, if I see you around, I hope you enjoy your stay and I hope you do feel better.
So you're from the government. You're here to, what, inspect this place?
Indeed. There have been some concerns in the wider community, but we are more open-minded than some of our constituents may be. We are mostly just here to make sure that this is indeed a place of good healing and good faith. Regardless of the details, we want to make sure that this place is not carrying with it any false consequences.
Listen, I know you're only doing your job, but it was your bosses who shut this place down, you know? And then some regular folks come in and they try and actually do a decent job of things, help others out. And then, of course, yeah, they send you round to poke in all the corners and find problems. And listen, you've got a job to do, but if this place shuts down, I don't know what I'm going to do. All right,
Mr. Brumby, if I may just interrupt you there. I understand your concerns. I understand your worries for what this may lead to. I speak to you not as a member of the government or an employee of the government. I speak to you as a fellow person. I am a man of science myself. Personally, I believe in the results first. I cannot speak to what my fellows may wish to see of this place, but personally, I am not here to check boxes on a form to find any excuse I can. I am here simply as a medical man to make sure that people are, like yourself, getting better. I have nothing but good intentions in mind. So you have my word that I am going to do this as fairly as possible. I am not being compromised by the assumptions and opinions of my higher-ups. I am simply here to make sure people are being healed.
So I think he's suspicious but mollified. And he says, you do that, mister. You do
Indeed.
that.
Indeed.
He stands up and walks over to Phineas with just a look of, he clasps his hand behind his back and gives them a nod of, all right, whenever you're ready, take me wherever you wish.
Phineas says, absolutely. So I thought we could tour the wards, perhaps take a look at the surgical amphitheatre. That's where a lot of our most advanced work is being done. And
that would be splendid.
Perhaps we can sit in the Tranquility Garden as it darkens.
That is a good plan. Please lead the way.
Lovely. Alrighty. I think let's cut back to Frank. Frank, it is getting dark. What are you doing in Malra Ward?
Frank is trying desperately to reassemble these clocks. I don't think to very great success. Frank is, he's not that he's, of course, bad with his hands. I think he's spent a long time getting rather, rather dexterous in that domain. But clockwork is notoriously finicky and requires specialized tools. And it's getting dark. And so Frank has really nothing that he would need to actually fix these clocks. So I think there comes a certain point where he's surrounded by tiny pieces, fragments of clockwork that are shattered or in various states of repair. I think maybe he had like a bit of glue that he was using to try to refit these tiny metal pieces back together, and nothing is staying together, nothing is working. And so he's just kind of sitting on the beach, his head in his hands, he's rubbing his head. Okay. I did borrow them for the day. Maybe I could get a clockmaker out tomorrow and they could repair, although a clockmaker's not going to come out on such short notice, especially not to a place such as this. Well, I'll at least get them back together in their different boxes, and if they don't work again, I'll offer something in exchange. We'll make it work. Don't worry about this, Frank. You were left here with a glorious mission, and you're going to take care of it. You're going to take care of these people. You're going to fix the situation. Or are you? I wonder how much of a situation there really is to fix here. I mean, obviously, nobody likes being preyed upon, but you know, we all are at all times of life, really, and you think about it. I wonder if I could try, and he like stands up quickly from the beach and he runs along one of the city streets that takes him up towards the Marrow's Maw bar where he's been previously. He like raps on the door and waits for the slide to open and peer out, and he says, "Can I borrow your phone again?"
It's you again, Frank. Yeah, all right, come on, you can come in.
Thanks. Please.
Hey, how was my
you.
clock? Did you get some use out of my clock?
Yeah, it's been hugely helpful. I will bring it back to you tomorrow.
Don't worry about it, mate. Come on in. And you once again enter the bar. The barmaid, seeing you, just gives you a nod and gestures to the phone that is once again in the back.
Yeah, he's going to run over to the phone and he's going to piece through the pages of the yellow pages sitting there and find, I think if it's not under its current name, under whatever its previous name was of the hospital. And he's going to try to call them and get them to put him in contact with Dr. Harrow.
Awesome. I think we can instantly leap to Dr. Harrow as you are kind of pushed through the doors. The receptionist, having finally picked up the phone, is frowning rather strangely and says, message for Dr. Nim Hallow. Dr. Nim Hallow, please report to reception.
Oh, he looks over at the Phineas and he goes, "One moment." Runs over.
Hospital lines are for work purposes only.
I do not work here, so I will be brief. He picks the phone. Hello.
Hello, doctor. It's me, Frank. It's your pal. Yeah. So I'm over here in Malreward, and I just had a lovely chat with our friend, the Minuteman, or the god who represents him. I'm not quite certain. My body looks weird and I'm seeing after images of myself, but I think that's just a natural part of it. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So this whole place is kind of a feeding ground for the god, and I think they might have been invited here by somebody. I've got some thoughts about what might be going on here. I'm trying to figure out whether or not this is something to fix. I would love your input on the matter.
Okay, Frank, you've caught me at an inopportune time. I will have to make this brief. First and foremost, it sounds like you might be suffering from some ill effects. Perhaps you should join us at this clinic if you're able to find a means of getting here, or at least to spend the time away from Malrod Ward to see if the effects wear off. Plus, I think it'd be more conducive to speak about these things in person, or perhaps we can meet you. Yes, my thoughts is I think that we need to speak about this in person and not over a phone that is very much actively being used by this hospital. My first thought is
Sorry.
my first thought is to get out of Malrod Ward.
Well, if that's what you need from me, I'll figure it out.
I don't. Okay, just give me. Can you give me an hour or two? I will call you back.
Sure. And he like looks nervously around the bar. I think for many people, like, oh, I've got 2 hours to kill here at this bar. I could chat with people, have a drink or something. And Frank is looking around, and the tables are all bussed. There's not very many people in here. Like there's nothing that looks obviously wrong in this space. And he's looking around nervously. He's like, oh, if I have to be near the phone, there's nothing to do here. And he's like, yeah, we could make an hour to work. Sure.
I will call as soon as I can. I just need to get to a better place to speak over the phone. You don't have to leave. Just I will call you back. He puts the phone on the receiver, probably to the glaring looks of the receptionist for taking too long on that. He straightens his tie and hastily goes back over in the direction of Phineas.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, just to check in with you, David, do you wish to proceed with trying to answer a question now by yourself, or do you want to wait and maybe connect with Dr. Harrow as requested?
I mean, I think it would be good to have a like sort of collective answer the question. I think that's definitely what I'm angling for. I think we have enough that we can like pitch a narrative for at least a flat roll on the question and see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm also fine to say that whatever narrative we spin is also the result of like the phone call that when I call Frank back later and we speak more at length over the phone, that's the fruits of it. But yeah, I'm totally fine to out of character do that right now since you're angling for that.
It's a good time to get out of Dodge too as well, I reckon. So yeah.
One detail I will add is when he realizes he has to like wait for this other call from Dr. Harrow, Frank like has an epiphany moment and he starts going through the pages and starts looking up clockmakers and calling every clockmaker that he can. I don't think any of them answer, but I do think that's what he like tries to make himself busy with, is trying to find somebody to repair the clocks that he broke.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I imagine there are very few clockmakers left in Malrod Ward, all things considered.
Yeah.
Okay, let's cut very quickly then to descending into darkness beneath the miraculous clinic. Vitria Stahl being led by Ignatius, his enormous shoulders just blocking out what little light there is as you plump down the steps. It's up to you. I think it's a no consequence roll for now. I'm just really interested to know what the answer is. If you want, Vitria, you can roll insight to see, is there actually concrete rot in this place, or were you wrong?
I think what I might say fictionally is actually what I'm looking for is what are the cults doing down here. I don't actually think there is any concrete rot, but I think we could take it as given that actually this whole hospital was made with substandard concrete and it's literally falling to bits. Like when Ignatius brushes through archways, bits of the concrete just crumble off. It's like brittle, like wafer brittle, rebar exposed everywhere, dripping rust. This place is actually a death trap. But that's not what I'm here for, because I'm here so I'm just going to keep my investigation and maybe that advantage you mentioned focused on getting to the place in the sub-levels where I can try and learn more about the clinic.
That makes perfect sense. So I think maybe I'll retroactively give you a clue for that information roll then, that as you descend, you can see, as you've mentioned, the kind of the rubble and ruins of these sub-levels. And then you pass a doorway and see something rather horrible. Just beyond it, in the darkness, there is what appears at first to be a box of prosthetic limbs. just kind of stacked, legs and arms all stacked together in a great big crate. And then as you pass by, some of them just twitch nervously in the darkness, just dancing fingers in this big box of limbs. And you can see these are very much not prosthetic limbs. These are flesh. This is a box of apparently severed limbs still dancing with life. Ignatius kind of follows your gaze, and he just and quickly closes the door and says, those are due for incineration. Come on, follow me. So that is your clue.
Incineration. And she just like puts her hat on more tightly, her hard hat, and kind of makes a Slag King mark on her chest and goes and just keeps following him with her torch out.
Amazing. Yeah, as the corridors get narrower and narrower, he just pushes one door open and says, morgue. You can see rows and rows of lockers, empty, but there is very clearly a slab in the center of the room. And over here, of course, we have the furnace. Sometimes Hallow transformations go wrong, so they get dumped in there, and that means I don't get to bury them, which I don't mind because the less work for me, the better.
I should inspect this because often it's the warm, humid conditions around in the pipes of the boiler. She's just making things up on the fly, which is where the rot begins. And basically, I just want an excuse to inspect the boiler.
You definitely get the impression Ignatius could not care less. He goes, yeah, okay, the rot. Go on, take a look. Then I can get back to my real work.
Yeah, so I just want to like try and figure out what the deal with this boiler is. Like, what are they doing with it? The furnace. So what are they burning in it? Is there anything weird or, illegal about what they're doing?
I mean, I guess if there is anything weird or illegal down here, there definitely is an element of risk with Ignatius behind you, right? So I reckon this could be a good veiled move. So this room where you've maybe got a few more boxes of these stacked limbs ready to be tossed into, what is ahead of you? A giant furnace, wide enough and tall enough that you could easily just step into it and be lost in the embrace of these burning white-hot flames that are just roaring. And you can imagine that somewhere up through the many layers of the hospital, there is a chimney belching out black smoke high above you. At a glance, there isn't anything necessarily remarkable about this furnace, but definitely I'd say you can go in for a closer look. I would ask you, what are you afraid is going to happen if you lose your nerve or if something goes wrong?
I'm afraid that there's something inside the furnace that is like, I don't know, something a risk I'm not aware of, whether it be divine or otherwise.
Perfect. All right. I would say please go ahead and roll. It could be insight or it could be maybe focus, since with the heat of those flames upon you, you probably need to kind of be a bit brave to push in close enough to it to see what's going on.
It's a +1 for both of those. I can't think of any other things I could use, so I'm just going to go for a straight sort of +1 on that one, and see how I go. Let's try that. Well, that's a 10.
Alrighty. I will come back with the result to that in a second. So let's leap back across to Dr. Nim, being led through the upper levels of the hospital. As Phineas leads you on, you just observe the kind of the groan, sighs, and muttering of slumbering patients in the many wards to either side of you. Some of them are in beds, many more are not. They're just slumped upon chairs in those same blankets in darkened corners, whimpering and whispering prayers to whatever god they have been promised to. And Phineas just kind of takes you through and says, Doctor, let me be blunt. I understand that we may not even be sanctioned, that we may be shut down, but is there any possibility the government could see fit to give us a stipend, a fund? We could do so much more here if we only had the money.
That will, of course, entirely depend on the outcome of this inspection.
Phineas sort of nods. I've learned that we can't expect anything in this life, so I understand. I won't put pressure upon you, but I'm sure you could see we really need this.
Well, Well, surely you must also understand that there is a bit of outcry, given the amount of false faiths that are involved in these matters.
I understand that, but what's outcry when there's so many people here who need help and who we're doing our best to help? Yeah. If the government wanted, all of these false faiths you're talking about could become licensed and legitimate in a snap of the government's fingers.
Would that I could move mountains, I would. But for the time being, all that I can promise is a just inspection and a fair inspection. Beyond that, I will do my best, but I cannot make promises that I do not have a guarantee of keeping.
That's fair. Well, let me introduce you to another of our patients. So what little money we do have to keep this place running comes from a little cosmetic surgery. There's a small cult that operates on the 3rd floor called the Grafted Glamour. And what they practice is, well, some rather experimental cosmetic surgery solutions. I'd like to introduce you to Sanju Medina, and Phineas kind of lead you into one of the wards where there is someone who is sitting with their face completely bandaged up, but a very wide grin upon what is visible of their mouth. And Phineas says, so Sanju has just had a procedure through the Grafted Glamour. If you'd like to ask any questions to them, I'm certain that they will be able to tell you the benefit that the Clinic of the Bleeding Witnesses had for them as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Does a little polite knock on the door of the room.
The figure with the fully bandaged face just says, "Come in."
Sanju Medina?
That's me. What can I do for you?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Nim Hallow. I am an inspector with the government. I'm just doing examining the premises. Is it all right if I ask you some questions?
Oh, of course. Got nothing to do here but wait until my face heals up.
Indeed. I understand that you've recently had some cosmetic work done by this small cult in the upper floors. Do you mind if I ask what transformations you have had performed?
Kind of a guttural, menacing laugh that even through the clenched teeth, you can tell that there's a strangeness to it. And Sanju says, well, it's very simple, you see. No one ever used to look at me. But thanks to the Grafted Glamour, they tracked down some saints from a god of beauty. I've got the flesh of a god on my face now. And when the bandages come off, everyone will look at me.
Indeed. He looks over towards the door where Phineas was, and then glances back at Sanju.
Is this your first time in this clinic?
No, they worked wonders for my grandparents, and then my aunt. My mother's on the next floor down. She's dealing with a rather more serious condition. But that's how I learned about the great work they do here, you see.
Fascinating.
He hasn't really taken any notes. His pen's just kind of poised over the clipboard with the form he's holding. I feel like he's very curious about these bandages on his face. Does it look like, can I make out any like evidence of like the grafting itself, or do the bandages completely cover every aspect of it and I would have to like see under the bandages in order to know the extent of what's been done with this saint flesh?
I mean, I love the direction of, are you going to take off the bandages and see what's underneath? So I'm going to say that for now, you can just make out the flesh under the bandages is shifting and writhing.
Fascinating. I feel like, why not? I want to do something pretty risky here. I kind of like the idea that Dr. Nim starts asking him some questions in that way of like when you're at the doctor's office and get like they distract a child before they like put the needle in to like, you know, get them to like not notice that that's happening to them. Similar of like asking him questions, and while he's answering, trying to very subtly peel up a bit of the bandages like at a corner of his face, and maybe won't notice to see if I can actually see what it looks like underneath before putting it back down. It sounds pretty risky, but I'm very interested in maybe pursuing this.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. God is involved, so this is going to be a revelation move, I think. What do you fear is going to happen if you fail or if something goes wrong here?
I do believe he will notice and probably become quite distressed.
This is how it's worse than that. He has indeed had the flesh of a saint of beauty attached to his face. And if you remove the bandages and if you perhaps take off a bit more than Dr. Nim should, because it still hasn't properly set yet, I think you are going to see a Galadriel turning scary and blue in Lord of the Rings style, vision of beauty that is going to make Dr. Nim be overcome and very possibly grab one of the scalpels and plunge it into his own throat as a sacrifice to this god.
Incredible. Love that. Yeah, I want to keep with that. That sounds great. I
Okay.
assume what we're going to do plus like focus on this maybe?
I think, yeah, focus makes perfect sense for this one.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll just keep it flat. It's a 10.
Perfect.
Yeah,
It's a 10. I think with a 10, you can see certainly. Otherwise, I will let you narrate the result.
Yeah, I feel that while Sanju is ranting and raving about the wonders of this beautiful procedure through that rictus grin, Dr. Nim is just nodding politely and very slowly reaches some fingers up to where the bandages are positioned at like the temple right before the hairline, and just very delicately with a fingernail lifts it up and peels it back just far enough to get a glimpse inside, where he sees this this moving sanctified flesh. I'd imagine it's quite horrifying in some ways. It's very discomforting, but also strangely beautiful. But he's not seeing the whole picture here, so it's probably mostly just a little gross. But I feel like that's enough to entrance him as he stares at this procedure. And somewhere inside of him, there is this nascent reaction, this chemical reaction that has not yet sparked, but it is a smoldering nugget of possibility of intrigue, and it stokes this sense of how do the divine beings and other saints of lesser faiths react to the all-encompassing pantheon of the Chymical Convocation? How do saints bow before the whims of the very matter of the universe? And similar to what we saw in the pub back in Malreward when he made his beer non-alcoholic, I think the audio dims like a drone muffled sound as we don't hear Sanju's words anymore. And instead, Dr. Nim's eyes just kind of stare at that flesh, and his fingers, which have peeled back the bandages just enough, begin to like hesitantly like reach underneath the bandage just slightly to like maybe like the first knuckle, and just taps at the flesh a little bit where he sees like a writhing pulse of the grafting. Maybe a little bit of pus or blood comes out. A very delicate touch. And I'm going to use Meet the Family, because I would qualify his grafted flesh to be no larger than a shoebox. The question is, do I try to purify it or do I infuse it with something else? That's the thing I'm warring with in my mind. Is Dr. Nim going to irradiate this man's grafting, or is he going to just see what happens if he tries to cleanse it of something else? I kind of want to leave this on a come back to me, because I'm actually really debating if I want to go evil or not evil on this.
I'm so excited to find out. Absolutely. I think so. Just David, sorry, I'll check back in. Would you rather we stay away from Frank until such time as we're ready for this phone call, or do you want us to leap back to you now? Have you got a plan for another?
No, I think the next thing for Frank should be us trying to answer a question. So
Got it. Okay.
I will say, I'll just throw out there, by the way, I'm totally fine answering that question now and then just retroactively saying like that there was a phone call involved to spark it off in character, but out of character, I'm fine having that conversation
Me
now.
too, yeah.
Great.
That way we can have Frank do things.
When I was looking at those clues, the first thing that came into my head, I was just remembering that Morkborg cross-stitch adventure where there's like a time loop that's gone wrong. But some of them sort of suggest to me that someone tried to create a loop and it went horribly wrong. That's the only thing I can think of so far.
Ooh, that's a fun idea. I don't know what David was already thinking, but I mean, first of all, the kicking off of that immediately. We know that the Church of Electric has been attempting to get the townspeople on to put a hydroelectric dam in here. What if that's partially not true? What if the idea is of like energy through time loops, maybe? Like the idea of like it's chrono electric, this idea of generating energy through a loop.
You can make a perpetual motion power plant through a time loop.
I think that does present a good situation explaining. So my initial thought was that either the Church Electric, some representative of that, or some representative of the town, basically invited this time god here in order to deal with the opposing side. But I think it's even more interesting because this is very Saint Electric folk to do, exploring new ways of generating energy. If they've uncovered this time god that specifically like seeks after and devours perceptually like wasted time or time frittered away, then taking them to a small seaside town that is past its prime seems like an awesome place to farm if you're farming for that. And so maybe the research going on at the Church Electric Station is trying to figure out how to now harness the temporal anomalies that have resulted here in this town.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like the idea that, because we kind of mentioned, or at least John mentioned, that the like heavily decomposed photographer was kind of like a bog body. I like the idea that since this area was like a feeding ground for a time god, that kind of leads me to think that there's like peat bogs in the area where there are some bog mummies, and indicative of like the weird advance of time and the way it like compresses materials and matter into different things. And this area has all been kind of this unmoored from time in a strange way, but it's been here for a while, but now it's just getting worse.
Yeah.
And maybe the first clue about the smallest human set of footprints is that actually after the Church Electric created their experimental sort of loop based on the existing kind of properties of the area, somebody like the Minuteman is kind of an expression of someone who wants everything to stay the same or something like that. And actually someone brought the Minuteman into being or something, and that's the other footprint.
I was about to say, what if the actual god here was not initially the Minuteman? It was this like this god of time, but the Minuteman is basically the evolution of it, where it merged with something else and became this more malevolent time god of marching around as like a monstrosity. Maybe that has something to do with the experiment. Oh, David just got some ideas right there.
Oh yeah. No, this is perfect. We've described it as being like sort of towering above the trees as this long, lanky form. Its head is that of the moon. What if the Minuteman is the Church Electric's like apparatus that is like connecting to and harnessing the power of this time god? And so it's like its body is actually composed essentially of like telephone poles and junction boxes and all these different things for them to being able to like connect up to this. And like the moon-like head is like some kind of incandescent bulb or something like that.
But to,
I'm
to speak to the term Minuteman, it's a vigilante. It's like a wound that's deliberately being created in time, and it's like
yes.
ready at a minute to like, attack the source of the infection.
It could even be then that the purpose for it is maybe to try and maintain the anomaly. That anytime like time begins marching too far forwards, like the Minuteman intervenes to like reinitiate the looping in some fashion.
It's like a bacterium in an infected wound that's keeping it kind
that's
of.
very cool too. Like big like if you see viruses, they look super weird. A lot of them. So something there's like a sort of mechanical quality to them.
Yeah, I like the idea that the vision of from the history of the town that Dr. Nim had, that figure burning a secret, that phrase on the journal, "My quick pulse begins to," and then it was destroyed. The idea that this could contextualize further the merging of one thing into the Minuteman. This time god does have an ill effect on people, and the reason why this research was being destroyed is someone else had was realizing to their own horror that this time god did have a parasitic aspect, where if it attached to something under the right circumstances, or like there was this wound or whatever, and this person was noticing the ill effects of that, but they were trying to destroy their revelations to keep that secret, to prevent it from being manipulated, and that then decades and decades later, it was unearthed by the Church Electric when they were trying to like work their experiments and do like chronal electric generators and all that. And then I think all the other clues on this list just serve to like contextualize what we've already said. So like the older upon the town, younger when leaving, indicative of the time loop thing.
And that it's like a wound, and the further you get away from the source, like an infection, like it's hot and inflamed, and then it gets cooler, as that it's like as you go away, the effect is lessened.
I like the visual image for the footprints, by the way, of the smaller set of footprints that walk alongside the cliffs, like with the monstrous ones. What if there is actually like multiple like human sets alongside them, and it is indicative of the time loop, where it's like this person walked in that direction and then walked back as the Minuteman, and then walked in that direction, then walked back as the Minuteman. It's like this like looping like trail of like the person goes up the cliffs, the Minuteman comes down the cliffs. It's like this loop of transformation and of like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it better than that.
Maybe so it's like a temporary sanctification then?
Maybe
to create the Minuteman?
Maybe the Minuteman has a handler, basically, that someone is using some kind of device. And then like Alex said, they walk a route, and then the Minuteman kind of comes in reverse and sort of follows, like that it kind of summons the Minuteman.
That's why it looks like the footprints are walking alongside each other towards the cliffs, because the Minuteman literally walks backwards down from that, like a reversal of time, and then it then goes into motion. So it looks like that. I kind of am into the idea that this handler is stuck in like this loop. It's not like someone it's not like this the Church Electric is like going, all right, and time to have the Minuteman show up. It's like, no, this one experiment where everything went pear-shaped is like this handler who was activating the equipment got stuck in it as well, so is constantly looping alongside the Minuteman. But the Minuteman's obviously able to break from that faulty loop and go about town and do things. But we had this human representative who just got stuck in the time loop as well.
And we don't know who that person is, because it's possible that the members of the church don't even remember who they are, because they've been erased retroactively from, they're atemporal.
It's like a Billy Pilgrim Slaughterhouse 5 situation, just unstuck in time.
just to check I've got this right, Church Electric forming chronoelectrical experiments has resulted in the arrival of the Minuteman. Some agent of the Church Electric has been trapped with it that we haven't seen yet in an endless time loop, turning the town into a kind of infection, all of which I love it. Does that sum it up? Is there any other kind of key detail we want to make sure we got in this?
The loop was the device by which the power was generated, and the Minuteman came out of like parasitically out of the injury, and the person who created the Minuteman got stuck in it, and now it's like feeding and
the
growing.
Minuteman's the Minuteman's kind of like a very it's like a white blood cell where it's just like it arrived as a defense mechanism, but it's also kind of parasitically now feeding off of the area.
But like, say, like with blood cells or whatever can go wrong, the same thing could happen in this case. Yeah.
Right. I absolutely love it. Is everyone happy with it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, love it.
I think you brilliantly used all of your clues, so this can absolutely be a flat roll.
All right. I'll go ahead and roll it. I just bumped my mic really bad, but that's very good. That's a 6 and a 5. That is 11.
11.
Yeah.
The streak of good rolls I have had in this game is better than in any game I have ever played. It's incredible.
It's beautiful to witness. All right, so we've got 3 rather exciting cliffhangers to resolve, and all of them pretty positive. I guess let's pick up where we left off with Frank with the question. You rolled an 11, so the correct answer to your question is indeed that the Church Electric were running some kind of device as a time loop, that one of their agents has perhaps been trapped in it and forgotten, and that this has led to the creation of the Minuteman. And David, I'd love your kind of help in imagining, how does Frank come to this realization?
I think Frank discusses the clues and stuff that everybody's uncovered at length with Dr. Harrow on the phone when he finds a quiet minute to use a side phone at the hospital. And I think like Frank's idea was like, someone has unleashed this thing on this town. Like, this town has become a feeding ground. It was not previously, or rather retroactively it has become that previously, but it was not that at some point in a different past. Like this whole temporal stuff has its own consequences. And I think in discussing things with Dr. Harrow, like maybe even pointing out small details that they saw back when they were visiting the Saint Electric facility, we just sort of collectively come to this conclusion, like, the Saint Electric's people have caused this, and they're trying to do something with the temporal anomaly here. They're trying to harvest something from it, and the Minuteman has come about as a result.
Awesome. I love it. I imagine you coming to this conclusion as you sort of sit nervously in the bar.
Yeah,
of the
he's like talking
Moor.
quietly into the phone. He's like, yeah, no, that makes sense. hey, having a good day at the yeah, I guess that works. And he's trying not to alert the town because he knows that there's already such bad blood between them and the church. So he's hesitant to stoke any animosity there yet.
That makes perfect sense. And you get an opportunity, of course. I should say, by the way, that you've unlocked the final 2 questions of the assignment, which are, how can a Minuteman be stopped? Nice and easy complexity 2. Or how can the Minuteman be controlled or turned to a new purpose? Complexity 4. So as usual with these assignments, the more complex one will give you a little extra ability, whereas the easier one is obviously the easier path, so less of a reward. I think your opportunity comes a moment later as you just put the phone down on Dr. Harrow. You hear the door again creak open, and you see a rather surprising figure. All the locals just staring daggers at him as Dr. Richard Neer of the Church Electric, looking shaky and worn, maybe even a little kind of dirt on his face. He just comes in with his head low, sits at the bar and says, barmaid, could I have two pints, please? Cora Locke gives him a look and just It's very possible she turns her back, that she spits in both of these pints, but she does put 2 pints of beer down on the bar in front of him. And Dr. Richard Neer sits there staring at his own drink and looking up at the clock, and then back down to the empty seat and the beer beside him. And it's as if maybe he's expecting someone to join him, but he's frowning, like he can't quite remember who should be coming to sit with him here. Potential opportunity there, but let's break away and go back to, I think let's go to Vitria down in the furnace, who you rolled a success again. So I would love to know, go on.
I think what I would like to do is I would like to write a verse to get a 12 plus. And I think I know exactly what verse to do, because I can just do it in situ. So I'm going to use the verse. So Vitria, you know, comes closer to the kind of blazing heat of the furnace and sort of gingerly opens the door and sees the kind of fiery glow of the furnace. And she's taken back. So I'm basically going to do a flashback to a time when you learned that sacrifice was necessary for a god must feed. And another Vitria, this time sort of about 13 years old, is gazing into the glowing white hot iron of a crucible in a big factory, a foundry. And she's standing with a delegation of men and women in suits and formal attire, looking on a gangway, looking down as a sort of struggling, screaming victim is lowered bit by bit, very slowly. And there's all sort of ticker tape and banners and, you know, things saying like firm foundations, new heights. And you know, it's like obviously a ceremony. And the man whose face we can't see in a sort of grey, concrete grey business suit stands beside her with her hand, with his hand on her shoulder. And she looks at with horror, transfixed, and you hear the voice saying, "Vitria, why must the sacrifice be made?" And she says, Daddy, I don't want to look." "No." And you see like a hand under her chin, turn her head around and say, "You must look. It is the duty to our faith. Why must the sacrifice be made, girl?" And she says, to cleanse the impurities from the metal so that the buildings might rise ever higher." And he says, "Do not forget, girl, this is our family's legacy. This is how the foundations remain firm. This is why a god must feed." And as he says that, the body of like probably like a false faith worshipper just starts to, you know, burn up in the white hot metal as girders are made for the faith. And she learns that a god must feed.
Thank you. I love it. I mean, that wonderful flashback is going to take you to a 12, so that's going to be a critical success. So I would love to know. I'm happy to give you an item that you find amongst these discarded body parts. I can give you an extra clue that maybe warns you of a danger, or I can give you a conspiracy clue that you might get on your way back up. It's up to you.
I think I might hold off on I don't want to push the clock forward too fast. So I think I'd like an extra clue.
Okay. I think first thing that you notice as you peer into the burning depths of the furnace, and this is clue number 1, is that inside, some of them just still going up in flames, you can see that there is just a horde of plush animals, little kind of get well idols, well-wishing cards, some of those same blankets you've seen people wearing. All of them are being burnt up in the furnace. You know, you can see the dead black eyes of the teddies just are the last things to go up in smoke as they are burnt. Clue number 1. I think clue number 2 that you see, so there are dangers aplenty in this hospital. This one maybe points towards one. You look down at one of these discarded boxes, and one of them says on the side, grafted glamour discards. And as you peel back the lid for the grafted glamour, this cosmetic surgery cult, inside are faces. Skinned faces, eyeless, toothless, just staring back up at you. And as you stare back down at them, those empty eyes just shift a little bit, and the empty mouth holes work their way into grins, staring up at you.
That is collectively creepy as hell.
Maybe kind of just, we whiz up through the hospital floors to Dr. Nim Hallow on one of the upper floors, who is peeling the bandages off one of the grafted glamour's patients.
Yeah, I've decided to go the route of the bad idea. I'm deciding to infuse this man's grafted saint flesh with radiation. I feel like it's subtle and not entirely something that would be immediately noticeable. But my idea for what happens is Dr. Nim is kind of like lost in this this somewhat trance-like state as he pokes and prods at the writhing flesh, and that deep, seated desire to see how the divine bends before the pantheon of the Chymical Convocation. As he pokes the flesh, there is a flicker in the fluorescence overhead, and a shivering heat travels through his nervous system down along his finger, and in a flash he tastes metal in his mouth, like he's just sucked on a penny, and that quickly begins to fade, and he blinks. But yeah, I'm choosing to use Meet the Family to infuse his grafted irradiation.
Absolutely love it. Do we think that Sanji would notice what's happening, or is this maybe a long-term consequence for him?
I think this is a long-term consequence. I'm using a bit of my inspiration from Chernobyl circumstances to be like, this might be my face itches, but it's just the graft. But then, there might be problems later. I'm also wondering if me doing this could trigger a investigation move to see if I learn anything from how this reacts and all that.
Well, you already did. You got a success on the revelation, so I think as a positive outcome for that, I think you definitely deserve a clue.
Yeah.
So I won't make you roll again unless you really want to.
No, I'm fine getting a free clue. Hell yeah.
Let's do it. I think,
I just did something demonstrably evil. I'll take a clue for it.
You deserve consequences. You do notice something, that Phineas is outside the room waiting politely, but in the top corner of the ward room, there is a security camera that it was just turning back and forth. And as soon as you started to take off Sanji's bandages and just do your little tricky Chymical Convocation business, that camera stopped dead still, as if it was just watching you to see what happened. Just observing. If anyone on the other side noticed that you were doing something dodgy, no one acted. It was like they wanted to see what was happening. So that is your
very
clue.
cool. I figure he wraps up the interview then, but will then politely remove himself from the room to rejoin Phineas.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. And by the way, I don't think I actually said it out loud, though it's on the crib sheet. Your question is just a complexity 2, which is, what is the hidden cost of the miracles being performed here? So at any time, of course, you folks may jump in and do that. Let's go right back to Frank. Frank in the bar. Dr. Richard Near in front of you. You have a pretty damn good hunch about what is going down with the Minuteman. So what do you want to do?
Yeah, Frank sets down the book he's been flipping through, sets the phone back on properly to its hook, and he walks with a slow regularity up to the bar. I think he rests his hand on the shoulder of the doctor, his other hand on the empty seat, and he says, "You waiting for someone?"
Oh, and he starts like he's seen a ghost for a moment and looks at you almost hopefully, and then says, no, both for me, I think.
Well, it's an awful lot to drink on your own. You mind if I at least keep you company while you do?
Of course, please do. I'm sure you've noticed most of the folks here don't like me very much.
Well, and as Frank kind of settles into the seat, it sounds like they might have a few reasons to.
Yes, I suppose they do. They're yokels, rural half-wits, hicks, correct?
I wouldn't put it in so many words, but haven't you and your people been a little bit active here?
Yes, but it's for everyone's good. They do use electricity even in a town such as this. If people want power, then they have to be ready for what power demands. We think of electrical power in its own right, but power is power, you understand. Power has demands. A god must feed. So the past that they dream of will never return to this town, will it?
And I think he says that, and like Frank looks out one of the mostly boarded windows, and through a sliver of sunlight from the dying day, he sees a building that was crumbling, slowly restoring itself. And he's like, well, they certainly shouldn't be able to experience the past once again, but let's just set that aside for a moment. Doctor, what have you paid for the power that your institution is procuring here? He like puts his hand over the doctor's hand, and he looks him in the eyes. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that you're missing something.
What on earth do you mean, my dear fellow?
Well, you set up this seat here. You clearly have a beer laid out for someone else. I think there's somebody you're waiting for.
He swallows and says, "Oh no, I think you're mistaken. The heat has gotten to me a little today, I must admit. But then it's hot every day, isn't it? Sometimes I find myself thinking, déjà vu.
Oh, most assuredly.
You and I, for example, I feel as if perhaps we've had this conversation before.
Could I roll investigation on that? My thought here being that Frank has the current condition currently, one of Time's servants. I'm wondering if this prodding might prompt Frank to reflect and potentially expose his mind to something that he has seen, whether it be past or future. It's kind of what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Please do. I guess communion roll, right? If it's kind of using his divine power.
I sure wish that I was better at communion, but... Oh, there they are. We're waiting for him. That's snake eyes on the dice.
Very nice.
2 - 1, so a 1.
So investigation rolls. There's not... I'm just trying to think what the negative consequences for something like this could potentially be.
Oh, I've done anything from killing the character to having something terrible happen to giving a conspiracy clue as a reaction. I don't know. There's a lot of fun things you could do here.
Oh yeah, you killed Mike. You killed Mike, didn't you? In your White Mountain rescue on a fail.
Oh yeah.
See, that's really interesting above table, because I would have assumed investigation roll are like the safe one, but are we saying we're happy for the consequences to be dire?
If there's a miss, especially as a strong miss like this, I usually just treat it as an opportunity for the keeper to make a hard move. Like really, it's like if you're like, I think this would make the scene more interesting and make it probably worse from what the character was currently pursuing, then you could really just do anything.
Okay, let me come back to that, because I want to make sure I do come up with something really good. Let's jump to Vitria. Are you going to stay in the basement, or are you going to come and join Dr. Harrow on his rounds?
I think I forgot what's his name, the grave digger guy. Is it Ignatius?
Ignatius.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna find Ignatius and say, take me right down to the roots of this place. There's a rot growing in the bowels of the building.
Ignatius says, well, if you're talking about the sub basements, no one goes down there. That's back from the old days.
That's where we need to go then, my friend.
All right, I'll find us a lantern. But if you get trapped down there, you understand it's not my fault. I can't be held liable.
Come on. You like burying things, right? Surely you're not afraid of burying yourself.
Right, but you know, I like burying things. Doesn't mean I want to be buried. It's not like a yeah, you know, I'll get the lantern.
That sounds like a very wishy-washy sense of divine commitment to me. Get the lantern, please.
Okay, I think we are going to instantly cut to a second set of steps. Danker, narrower, and rougher than what existed before. I think even just kind of putting your hands against the wall, you can tell that this is wet stone rather than concrete as you descend further. And Ignatius, his lantern raised, he says, some of the old temples to the ancient healing gods are down here. Haven't been fed in centuries, so I figure it's probably nothing to be worried about, but just stay close to me, all right? He begins to kind of mutter a prayer to the Cairn Maiden to keep him safe as he descends and descends. I mean, down here, very much, I imagine these ancient temples, there definitely is going to be a risk of something still being alive down here that you do not want to be. So I am very, very intrigued. What do you think you're going to find?
Hopefully not like a gelatinous ooze or something. I think what do I hope I'm going to find? Some hint. Basically, I'm looking for malfeasance that they're trying to hide down here. And I want to know what they're hiding. They don't want the patients up top to see, because if they're hiding limbs in boxes and faces in boxes and they're burning the toys, something, I think they're hiding worse stuff down here. And that's what I want to know about, so I can tell Dr. Harrow about it when I get back up again and we can compare notes.
Okay. I think you're going to descend further into the darkness, and Ignatius' lantern just the smallest glint, like a star, a lone star on a starless night. The light seems smaller and smaller as you feel your way along. The wet stone takes you to the left and then right and says, I thought it was, and as he hesitates, ahead of you in the darkness, you hear a blood-curdling scream. Just a scream that goes on and on. Someone who is in horrible, agonizing pain, and it will not stop no matter what you do.
I think Vitria clutches her hard hat and says, Father of Edifices, protect me from harm. Protect me from harm, almost kind of like reflexively. And she says, what is that, Ignatius?
Ignatius turns to you, and 2 tears are trailing down his big cheeks. And he looks at you, and he just looks sorrowful. He just looks so sad, as if this scream has just shaken him to his core. And he says, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish I'd saved you. I wish I could have helped you. I wish I could have saved you. I would like you to make a revelation move, please.
Oh, yeah, you know it. I'm definitely going to mark my hat because I'm clutching it talismanically in front of me. I'm going to mark my safety track to give myself advantage. That's presumably with communion.
Well, I'll let you dictate how this situation you'd like to react to. I'd say to kind of steel yourself against whatever's happening here, communion would be a good shout. If you're going to turn and leg it to the exit, then vitality.
I think it makes sense to, like, the way I've framed it is that I'm enduring it, using my hat as sort of metaphysical protection.
I like that. What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail?
I'm afraid that it's like basically I'm going to come face to face with whatever's making the moaning, and it's going to be hungry for me.
This is how it's worse than that. I think you will persevere pushing past Ignatius as he weeps, but as you get closer to the source of the screaming, you'll hear more and more voices of the pain-tormented souls throughout the centuries of this hospital who have suffered here. And as you are overcome by the suffering all around you, suffering which you are helpless to prevent, tears will begin to roll down your own eyes, and it'll become harder and harder to walk. And as you try and advance further towards the heart of the hospital, very slowly you'll find yourself turning to the same wet stone that is down here, just the tears forming and smoothing your cheeks into a statue that weeps but is frozen in time.
Okay, so I'm just basically, it's like a flat roll with advantage, I believe. Oh, that's an 8.
An 8 is a mixed success. Alrighty, let's come back to that in a second. Dr. Nim Hallow, are you continuing the tour with Phineas, or do you wish to break away?
I would like to continue the tour. There are still places of the building I'd like to see.
Absolutely. Well, next, you're advancing now, I think, to probably the 6th floor. As you kind of walk down the corridor, I think you start to hear just the steady beep, 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 beep of heart monitoring equipment from a neighboring room. And then it just kind of starts to quicken, beep, beep, beep. And then it's joined by another heart monitor, beep, 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 until it becomes a chorus, just this crescendo of frantic warnings and alarms from that same faraway room. And then Phineas just keeps walking, and as you keep walking, the sound is just lost. Like whatever was happening there, everyone around you is ignoring. But then Phineas pushes ahead, opens a set of double doors, and says, so here we have the surgical amphitheater, cosmetic procedures, of course, but also life-saving ones for emergencies. You can see there, that is Joyce Spindlecarver, our top surgeon. And below, in the center of the operating theater, before a body in scrubs, you see a figure that just kind of raises a hand very simply to you, blood-stained palm, and then returns to the surgery. Phineas kind of turns and says, yes, of course, we should be very quiet while we're in here. And just help to paint the scene here, please, folks. You have entered the surgical amphitheater. We're seeing tiered benches on either sides, looking down over that central operating table upon a rounded dais. Next to that long table where the figure is being operated on, we can see surgeon's tools soaking in ornate jars of sanctifying solution. On a chalkboard on the far wall, you can see that miraculous prayer sigils related to this operation are being sketched in grotesque detail by a waiting nurse. The question is, how has this space been arranged to evoke reverence and spiritual awe? How has this space been arranged to evoke reverence and spiritual awe?
I think much like what was narrated for the outside of the building, there is a hospital cross symbol, medical sign that is of bright neon, like red cross lights that are mounted above the operating space, bathing the entire area in this bright red glow. I'm kind of thinking like Kramer's room in that one Seinfeld episode, just bright neon red light from this hospital cross.
The pillars that hold up the roof around the amphitheater are basically like, full body length specimen tubes filled with bubbling yellow liquid with sort of pallid formaldehyde preserved vivisected bodies in them in various states of dissection. And there's quite a lot of them, and they bubble like a water cooler kind of intermittently.
I think there is described it sort of as amphitheater seating as you might have for one of these older style operating rooms. And I think central to that, there's been installed. This was not original to the hospital. It was put here for this version of it. a organ, and there is live accompaniment that is playing to underscore the emotional beats of the surgery happening in the middle of the space.
I would like to ask a follow-up question, which is what kind of music are they playing? Is it kind of very gothic and grand, or is it like a little light jazz to accompany these awesome lava lamp-esque tubes? What's the vibe?
I think it's almost like film score orchestral, where it's swelling. It like with each slash of the blade or every pull of the hacksaw, there's just that swelling of the tone that fills you. And then, when they're exchanging tools and having a quieter moment, you have just those soft notes being carried in the air. I'm imagining something very. The effect, I think, is designed to inspire awe.
Like, I like the idea of it actually being like an organ in here. But it's like there's like the surgeon's assistant playing it, like the keys are all smeared with red because they have these like blood-stained hospital gloves, so as they're pressing the keys, they're just smeared with blood.
That is fantastic. And I'm imagining Dr. Spindlecarver as she operates, very much in that kind of Jeremy Irons' Dead Ringers controlling surgeon mode. She is conducting with her scalpel and then stops and does a cut, stops and does another cut. Bam. Lovely. Phineas says, well, as soon as Dr. Spindlecarver is finished, I'm sure she'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, well, over to you, Doctor.
With a nod, Dr. Nim studies this Joyce Spindlecarver, watching her movements very carefully. I'm interested to just sit here and watch this with a very academics, medical mind, watching the scene, observing her work and observing the other people present here, just watching very studiously.
I think what you note is Dr. Spindlecarver is clearly an expert in her field. Some doctor out in the sticks like this, even a licensed one, you wouldn't expect this level of care, accuracy, and precision. But there is no love in the way that she operates. It's like watching an automaton at work. It's like watching a robot. Very careful, very precise, but she may as well be operating on a carcass, on a car.
Fascinating. I'd like to do the information move in this scene to see if I observe anything while I'm watching during this time. I have to wait for her to finish before I engage further, so I might as well see if I notice anything about this whole place.
Hell yes, please do. Yes, an insight, I figure.
Yeah, let's see. Do I have any items I want to throw in here? No, I'll just roll flat. I've been pretty complication free. I want to tempt fate a bit more. And yet I don't. I rolled a 12 total.
A 12 total. Awesome. Well, information move, I believe a 12 total does get you a conspiracy. A conspiracy clue instead as well.
Oh, yeah, both. Yeah, I get both.
Awesome. Okay, let's.
What a great time to get a conspiracy clue watching a surgeon work.
Absolutely, I got to figure out what that is. Let's jump back to Frank. Frank, you rolled a miss, and you were attempting to see if your new condition was going to help you to, I guess, gauge something about what has happened before or what is going to happen. Unfortunately, in fact, it does just the opposite, because you ask your question to Richard Neer, and then quite suddenly you are sitting alone at the bar with one pint in front of you and another pint waiting. The door creaks open and Dr. Richard Neer comes in. He takes his seat and he says, "Waiting for someone."
Frank's hand is like hovering by the edge of the glass and he rests it on the table. I thought that I was, but can't seem to remember.
Oh, how peculiar. Well, do you mind if I sit with you? I'm sure you've noticed, but the locals round here don't like me very much. And just to give you an opportunity in case you want to write a verse, I am proposing that the negative consequence for that miss is you have been sucked into the time loop.
Oh, I actually love that.
Okay.
It's going to be complicated, and I like that. Yeah, he gestures to the seat. I'm not a local. No ill will here. But I know in this town it's obvious, but did you ever get a sense of deja vu sometimes?
Strangely, yes. And I hope you don't mind me asking, but when I came in and I saw you like that, you looked like you were missing something. Is that true?
And Frank kind of looks off through the window. Again, there's like a sliver. He sees actually the building that previously we saw kind of restoring itself, crumbling a little bit in front of his eyes, and he tilts his head to the side. Do you know anybody who knows how to repair clocks?
As you say this, and the sunlight through that window just fills your eyes, you take a breath, and then the sunlight fades as you push open the door to the Merrow's Moor, step inside, and Dr. Richard Neer is sitting at the bar with 2 pints.
Yeah, Frank blinks his eyes and tilts his head and takes a few patient steps forward, sets a hand on the doctor's shoulder, one on the seat. You waiting for anybody?
Oh no, these are both for me.
Oh. And he, mind if I sit here?
Oh, no, of course, please help yourself. I'll be glad of the company. I'm sure you've noticed, but people around here don't really seem to like me.
And Frank looks around. Is anybody really even paying attention to him right now?
Cora Locke at the bar is, maybe watching, perhaps a little concerned for Frank, who I'm sure, like everyone else in town, he has befriended while taking their clocks, because she has definitely spat in one of those 2 pints that is sitting in front of him. But the other locals, they gave Near lots of dirty looks, but they're not really paying attention.
Looks around. Well, you don't seem to be hated, at least. Chin up. Maybe you can do something and get the people back over on your side.
And just for a second, your different reaction has perhaps caused a little bit of a fracture, because you can his form breaks a little bit, and he says, yes, I've been thinking exactly the same thing. Mum's the word, but we've been working on something rather special up there. Something that I think if these good people could see it, they might really change their minds on us.
Why not show it to them?
Well, when it's ready, we need to iron out all the kinks first. But when it's ready, I really think it will do a lot of good here. Maybe even turn this town's fortunes around. You can't keep living in the past, can you?
And that phrase exactly, like we hear it like echoing louder and louder, like a wave in Frank's ears. I'm sorry. Have we met here before?
You were here with the government fellows, weren't you?
Oh,
you made everyone a cup of tea. That was nice.
We made tea. Yeah, your tea with love. Thank you so much, by the way, for having that on hand. It was delightful. That wasn't here though. I think Frank is going to grab the beer and he's actually going to take a drink. And it's almost like iodine. I think it like burns his throat in a way. He's taking like a sharp deviation from things he's done previously in this little loop that we're having here. And he kind of coughs and sputters and sets it back down. I don't drink, you see. It's a waste. Oh, could I help you with your work?
Help me? I mean, that's very kind.
I'm very good with my hands. I'm very good at being quiet when I need to be.
Yes. Well, why don't you put in an application, and you have to put it in via the Church Electric's headquarters, and we'll see what we can do.
Sure. Do you have any copies of the applications? up at your site?
Yes, I suppose. Well, we could go there now. Do you want to? I mean, I've had enough to drink, I think, as it is. Should we go up and see if we can get you an application?
I'd love that.
Okay, well, good. Follow me. And he sort of gets confidently up and gestures to you to follow him out into the sunshine.
And Frank will like take out his wallet and leave like an extra tip there at the bar, and then follow him out the door.
Perfect. Follow me. And so you walk out into the sunshine, out of the sunshine, into the bar, where 2 pints are waiting for the both of you in front of 2 stools. And at this point, I think you're just going to hear the same hissing chorus of voices that you heard back on the pier. You are trapped, little pilgrim. You were trapped, little pilgrim. You will be trapped, little pilgrim. But we can help. Make a sacrifice to us, and we will set you free. We have set you free.
Frank takes a beat at the doorway where he hears this echoing in his head. I think he sneaks a glance at the doctor, and I don't think the doctor shows anything on his face like he heard this. And so Frank puts on a smile, grabs the shoulder of the doctor. Thanks for meeting me here for these drinks.
Oh, you were the one I was waiting for. It had quite slipped my mind. It is so good to be sitting down for these.
Oh yeah, it's a relief to see you again. We've had a hell of a day. He like pulls out the seat from the bar and gestures for him to sit, and he joins next to him.
You know, this feels a little bit like deja vu, doesn't it? I really feel like, I know we've only met once, but I really feel like we have a common connection, you know? I feel like we've been friends forever.
Yeah. The longer I think about it, I think we might have been here for some time, even though we've just arrived. Here, have yourself a drink. I'm not much one for alcohol myself, but hey, doctor.
Yes,
what
Frank?
have you done here?
Well, it's not about what we've done. It's about what we're going to be doing. It's going to be very exciting. It's really, I think, going to turn a lot of people around on us. And he sort of, something in his mind seems to be breaking. Like he knows deep down that he is just repeating the same conversation in slightly different ways over and over. He says, something we've done. Something we've done. What did we do? Oh, God, what did we do? And I think, again, Frank, you just hear that whisper in your head. He is guilty. He will be guilty. Summon us in, Frank. Summon us in to feed. And I think let's jump from that little moment and go to Dr. Nim, who, I'm sorry, we've had too many very good rolls. Please remind me, you were just a standard success, weren't you?
I was a 12, so I got a clue.
You were
and
the
a
critical
conspiracy clue.
success. As you watch the surgeon at work, I think what you see is rather curious. So next to that giant blackboard, you have one of those things you often get in hospitals where it's maybe thank you photos from recovered patients. So, smiling parents, someone being wheeled out in a wheelchair, giving a big thumbs up, kids taking their first steps again. And as you kind of watch, you're just kind of squinting across the room at it. But what you realize is that the names look wrong. They look like not names at all, but saintly titles. So underneath the granny with a thumbs up in the wheelchair, it simply says, Hallowed Saint of the Bleeding Witness. Another one says, Blessed Angel of the Crimson Inkwell, Holy Drifter upon the Slow Wave, Avatar of Snuff. And all these kind of just different photographs that perhaps for you to read this, they're a little bit closer than I initially described it. But yes, you can read these recovery photos don't appear to be recovery photos at all. And as I think you glance across, you do get a conspiracy clue, which is in the next, I'm just trying to decide if it should be in the next room or in the surgical amphitheater for space. Got it, a break room, right? So perhaps off the amphitheater, there is a little doctor's break room where a couple of tired surgeons sat in front of a TV. And you can just hear over the sound of the organ, the noise of a television newscast. And the newscaster just says, and the god strikes, the new investigative team for the handling and neutralization of stray and illegal deities celebrated another success today, showing off the remnants of an angel that was hunted and killed in your territory. We spoke to their captain today. He gave us some very brave thoughts on exactly how they took down this monstrous false god. Captain, could you tell us a little bit more about, and you just you catch a glimpse of the news host with her microphone turning towards a very large man in his 50s or 60s in combat fatigues with a grey beard, long grey hair, and one of the surgeons, seeing that the door is ajar and that the noise is filtering out into the surgical amphitheater, gets up and closes it. So the conspiracy clue is there is a team, another team, it seems, of god hunters operating in this territory, and they are called the God Shrikes.
Intriguing.
Okay, so you've got your clue, you've got your conspiracy clue. I think within 10 minutes, there's kind of some light applause as Dr. Spindlecarver finishes her work, puts the scalpels to one side and goes to wash up, as several attendants wheel away the body of the apparently cured patient out through the double doors, and it is gone. She peels back her gloves, but keeps on her surgical mask, and then comes up the steps. Phineas Gland, looking rather relieved, says, Dr. Spindlecarver, this gentleman is actually from the government, come to review and inspect us, to see how we're all doing here. So any questions you have, I'm sure Dr. Spindlecarver would be delighted to answer them.
Thank you. Dr. Spindlecarver, Dr. Harrow, pleasure to make your acquaintance. I'm curious, do you mind if I ask the particulars of that patient you just finished with, about their condition and the procedure you just operated?
Dr. Spindlecarver stands perfectly still, and again you have that strange sense of an automaton. Her eyes are the only things that just twitch back and forth behind the surgical mask. She says, No, I don't think so.
I see. Then may I take a look on the floor of the auditorium, of the amphitheater, so I may examine your tools and materials you have for your procedures?
Do as you will. You will not find truth here. True revelation pulses only in the hearts of the purest sacrifices. We receive those profound truths courageously. And just a bit of, you wouldn't quite call it warmth, but passion starts to come into her voice. She sounds like a fanatic for a moment, like a true believer. And she says, only when a patient's flesh and bone is laid bare, with nothing left to hide them from that which bears witness, is their true nature revealed. May you have the courage to become a most worthy vessel yourself when your time comes.
Thank you, I suppose. Shifts uncomfortably, and yeah, he'll step down into the area proper to. He's like looking around, seeing the tools and materials on display. Is there any things I can poke and prod into here?
I think she is definitely watching you, and I think we've had lots of gorgeously successful information rolls. So I'm going to say there's definitely going to be some risk involved to this one.
Makes
sense.
sense.
This will be a veiled move if you want to poke around without getting Dr. Spindlecarver's back up.
Oh, absolutely. I want to do that.
Okay, cool. What do you think is going to happen if you fail? Or if you lose your nerve?
Honestly, I think I'm going to get escorted rather forcefully from this premises, and it'll be more difficult for me to look around because they are extra aware of my prying.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think you'll get a good, one of those good old marked conditions for Dr. Spindlecarver, having very much sussed you out. Alrighty.
Feels like focus yet again, I would imagine.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
All right, cool. That's a 10.
A 10. You guys, why are we even rolling? You don't need to worry about this.
I really need to get some conditions so I can like have some bad rolls here. But yeah, Dr. Nim is in his element right now.
He is. Okay, well, let's go to someone who didn't quite roll a 10. Let's go to Vitria, and it was a mixed success, wasn't it, for attempting to overcome. So I think you can. This is a revelation move, so of course you can write a verse if you wish to. But I think what is going to happen is you can certainly press on, kind of blinking back the tears of the sorrow that is filling your heart. But behind you, Ignatius just begins to, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have saved you. As his limbs begin to just break and distend outwards and outwards, and he begins to fill the corridor as his body expands, as he becomes a saint of sorrow.
I'm going to roll with that because that's awesome.
Okay.
And terrible.
I think, his eyes are kind of waterfalls of horrible looking, smoking tears, and his mouth is just distended in a massive kind of howl of agony, and he screams like a banshee as he begins to advance along the corridor towards you. The lantern is dropped by his feet. You are otherwise in the dark and you do not know this place. What do you want to do?
I am going to try and cause a cave-in with this inferior. Oh no, we're below the. I'm basically going to try and convince the corridor to cave in on him in a like a controlled demolition kind of thing. I'm just trying to figure out if there's anything I can do to help me with that. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my jar of sacred gravel as the kind of catalyst, and I'm going to throw it and start casting it and saying, flesh of stone and earth, close your womb, close your pathway, the way is shut, and just keep backing up, throwing gravel, like a kind of ashes, sort of throwing them from the jar.
That is awesome. I mean, this is going to need to be a revolution move again, I think, isn't it? But there are so many wonderful things that could go wrong here. What do you think is going to happen if you fail?
I think I'm going to have to dig my way out.
I mean, here is how it is worse than that. You may well survive in the caved-in tunnels and have to dig your way out, but you will be trapped in there with the still living Saint of Sorrow pursuing you through the tunnels. Furthermore, a cave-in is absolutely going to collapse the lower levels of the hospital. All those poor people in the waiting room are just going to kind of fall through. Phineas Gland perhaps will have just about enough time to go, oh my God, she was right about the concrete rot, as he kind of falls downwards into the chasm that you have opened up by calling down your god.
Whoops. Oh dear. This is workplace. This isn't a safe workplace environment. I'm really glad I saved my verse for this one and didn't use it before. All right, well, so I'm gonna do that with advice. Is that communion, do you think?
If you're communing with your god, yeah, that's definitely
I think that's
right.
communion, because I'm basically trying to. I'm not sure how much sway the Slag King has over ancient ruins beneath the earth, but it's got to be better than the alternative, right? Yeah. So, and I think that's a +0 on that one for me. Yep. So that's advantage +0. Oh, that could be worse. I got a 9.
A 9. Okay, that's pretty good. All righty, we're gonna run a bit into the end here. So let's just do some kind of quick check-ins before we leave this off. Frank, you are trapped in a time loop, having the same spit-filled pint, and there is a god in your ear whispering that it will release you if you sacrifice the man in front of you or allow him to be sacrificed by the Minuteman.
Yeah. I think those words, that offer, is sitting heavy in Frank's head. And he looks up and he sees Coraloc's face standing there behind bar. He turns and sees the faces of various members of town that he's seen just that day, at least, from his perception. The moments spent with each person in town he borrowed a clock from, the favors he did, a shattered door he repaired, a bedroom cluttered with every generation's belongings that he helped clear, a car covered in months of grime accumulated in minutes that he brushed spick and span, and the pile of broken and bloodied clocks sitting there by the seaside. And he glances at the doctor again, and he reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out his own pocket watch, which he pops open, and we see the glass cracked. We see the arms unmoving inside, and we see an inscription on the inner window, the same one that we've seen him write repeatedly in his journal. It just says, "I will not dwell on idleness. My hands are made to serve." And Frank reads those words, and he mutters them quietly to himself a few times. "I will not dwell on idleness. My hands are made to serve." And he reaches over and he pops open the little mechanical doodad at the edge of the watch, and he begins to spin it to forcibly move the arms around the face of the watch into position just before the hour is struck. You can see it like sort of twitching in anticipation, desiring to pass that last 10 seconds to hit the minute mark. And he closes it and he hands it to the doctor. "Well, would you look at the time? I think you need to go back. I think there's something waiting for you."
Interesting. So is this an attempt to game or break the time loop? Is that the...
I think Frank is trying to, because we've seen the Minuteman always comes on the hour. So he's trying to position time to be like basically about to ring in the hour, give this object set to that to the doctor, and send him outside to meet his fate.
Good Lord, that is incredible. I think that is exactly what is going to happen. I think you're going to hear those little peals of laughter from the god that you've communed with, sounding almost just like the chimes of a clock on the hour. As Dr. Richard Neer says, "Oh, jolly good. Yes, I should be making the final arrangements to our little doodad. No one else knows how to work it but me, so if I'm not there to make sure everything's shipshape, who knows what could go wrong." He just gets up, finishes his pint, Coraloc smiling very faintly with a little smirk. "This was nice, it's good to have a friend. Thank you, Frank." And he turns and steps out into the sunshine as the clock goes dong, dong, dong. And your blessing means that you see it before it happens. You hear his screams. You see his face turning to a chalky white ashen pallor as it ages a centuries in a moment. Then just he's torn back, and you see him deteriorating into a teenager, into a child, then back to his older self, and then just his body breaking apart under the weight of centuries lived and lost in a moment. And it was agony for him. It was agony, and he was frightened right to the end.
Frank actually does drink the last dregs of the other beer, and he sets it down on the table, and he stands up, looks around. "I broke your clocks, but I'm gonna fix this."
Cora goes, "Oh, don't worry about it, Frank. We know you're a decent sort." Man by the bar, by the door, just, yeah, it's all right, Frank. Just, I was a favor sometime. Don't worry about it. It's all right. You're a good sort.
I think at like the words, "You're a good sort, you're good, Frank," he just, like, his smile almost grows wider. It becomes more fallacious. I try.
Of course you do. And just very faintly in the background, we begin to hear a car alarm go off. Cora goes, oh, I guess the good doctor shouldn't have been driving under that condition. I wonder what's happened. And in that moment, we're just going to cut right back to Dr. Harrow, snooping around, rolled a 10 on the surgical floor, and you were just powering through the clues for this one. I am going to say the clue you receive is going to be, as you look at the kind of the rituals and paraphernalia on the floor, much of it quite eccentric, certainly none of it according to the book. This doesn't appear to be any kind of licensed divine surgery that you've seen. You do just kind of quietly pick up a pamphlet that's been dropped to the floor. And this is, it's one of those kind of pamphlets that says, so you're mourning the irreparable loss of a loved one. It is for families of patients, listing available resources from a mourning god, a god of grief. And I think maybe just as you kind of quietly pick this up, Dr. Spindlecarver kind of sniffs and then goes through into the break room, and Phineas Gland kind of comes and says, well, I thought that perhaps afterwards we could visit the level, and just both of you shake a little bit as there's just the smallest tremor. Like there was a very low level earthquake in the hospital. The light bulb above rattles a little bit. Some of the door frames kind of shudder. Phineas says, strange, I've never really heard of earthquakes in this part of the peninsula before. Smash cut to Vitria, far below. I think you're quite right, James. You said in the chat that it's very likely there's going to be condition. But first, I'd love to ask you, you were trying to set off a cave-in down here. Can you tell us how that plays out?
I think the best way to do that is to see basically what it looks like. So like the rest of the hallway, you can just see the dust in the air and the rubble's all like, it's blocked. The hallway is completely blocked. And you just see this hand push out from between two broken bits of stone, and just Vitria like drag herself out, like covered in concrete dust, and brushes off her hat and puts her glasses back on and says, firm foundations, new heights.
I love that. I'm going to say you've come up in the tranquility garden outside the hospital. So maybe there's a couple of patients who are just enjoying their peace and quiet, who are absolutely horrified by your Carrie-like entrance there. I love that. I think that's probably a perfect place to end this for today, if we're all happy to. Amazing. Okay. I love it. So could we all please do a quick check-in on XP? Where did we get to? And are we going to have any advancements today? Dr. Nim, how did you do?
Yeah, so I feel like I did engage with a divine manifestation given the grafted flesh. I feel like I went out of the way to connect with the local community. I was very determined to speak with patients, not just for business reasons, but as we saw in the lobby, I was like, hey, let me talk to you like one-on-one here. Like, I break the bureaucracy. Let's talk as people. And then undermine my orders to pursue personal interests. Yes, I irradiated a person to see what would happen. So that gives me 3, and I take an advance.
Awesome. Love it. Well deserved. Thank you. Okay, who was to the right? Vitria.
So I definitely engaged with a god or a divine manifestation and had to bury it. I in the verse, I struggled with my personal faith, seeing the harsh realities of the worship of the Slag King. And I spoke of the terror, sublime joy, and marvelous nature of architecture through my prayers. And I think that the incentive on my safety track is working, because I could reduce it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to be greedy and take 3 XP so I can level up. So so the creep of my track continues onwards.
Awesome. Very exciting to see how that ends up working out. And Frank.
So did I engage with a god, angel, or other divine manifestation? I definitely think so. Did you deliver a monologue about any of the following: the nature of gods, futility of individual choices, horrors that society accepts as good and necessary? I think Frank did in the interaction at the beginning, sort of telling a god how a god was, which was a bold move. And then this is the one I'm not as sure about. Did you go out of your way to connect with the local community? I mean, there's still like all these hallmarks of Frank having these connections with the people. And I guess ultimately I framed it as Frank made the decision to sacrifice the doctor as sort of penance for breaking all of the clocks of the townspeople and like trying to do something for them because he thinks the doctor's responsible for the current situation. Do we think that that is that counts?
I mean, I'd say going out of the way of time to connect with the local community counts.
But yeah,
I'll take
I
it.
also think, you know, we did it off screen, but you did go literally round to all the townsfolk to borrow their clocks.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is
Yeah.
absolutely, we did it quickly, but you completely connected with them all.
I think you were unfailingly helpful to the community to a fault.
It is unfortunately a driving feature of Frank's character.
Beautiful. Okay, so I think all of you going to have a chance to level up then, is that?
Yep, looks like it.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see what happens. Okay, well, yeah, thank you. That was amazing as ever. Stars and wishes. Does anyone have any?
I really liked the bouncing back between the two areas. Very, very different paths being walked. I thought almost collapsing the entire hospital at the end. Great move. Love that from Vitria. And Dr. Harrow, I loved the way it progressed with like first being like, oh, well, I just want to see if I can see what's underneath. And it's like, oh, I want to see if I can like touch it. Well, if I can touch it, like what would happen? Like it was just very true to that character, this sort of desire to investigate, to tinker, to discover, even if that might be at someone else's expense. I thought that was a really good scene. And then I mean, goodness, I thought the description at the hospital was incredible with like laying the scene of what we were all seeing and just the setting the vibes. And I think the what you were doing there with your shoulders, John, when you were doing like the emergent saint, I was like, this thing's unpleasant. I wouldn't want to be in the room with this.
Yeah, I got some stars. I want to say that particularly loved Memento Mary. I know that took James out completely, but that was a great name. That was really funny. Just overall, yeah, John, your managing of the pacing and cutaways and spotlight management was all phenomenal. Very cinematic and really enjoying kind of these jump arounds, and also just way to introduce the new assignment in a way that allows us to like have like one of us disappear for the session, which made complete sense. Like, oh, there's a murder on the radio. I'll go check that out. Worked really well. God, just the like times servant or whatever it was, that's a great condition, but also the complication of like, yeah, you're now just trapped in a time loop. That's sick. Everyone has been dealing with these like really fun complications, and I feel like Frank has a very extraordinary little odyssey going on over there that I can't wait to hear about and see how it resolves. Yeah, concrete rot is hilarious as well and terrifying. Just overall, everyone's contributions to the narrative were really fun. I think my favorite scene of the session today, like just visually, is the operating room, like the surgery amphitheater. Just the way like everyone like contributed some other details to that. It's very very creepy and kind of like cathedral-esque, and it was very striking to me. I already picked my advancement, so my wish basically is just like I'm looking forward to using that more often, and I also hope I roll bad and get some conditions because I want to have Nim go through it. So yeah. Oh, and I'm sure there will be consequences for irradiating someone's facial graft. So
My biggest star is that time loops are really hard to do, and John and David. You just did like an extraordinarily good job at it. And that was just a great bit of like role playing and a great sort of, I just thought that was really well done. And I agree with Alex, the pacing was really on point and the spotlight management today, like, and I really want to know what happens to that face as well. That was a great use of the move. And I like that, like, Frank even has to be helpful to the time god. Like, he's always got to be helpful, always being helpful. And I just love all, like, contorting yourself into helpfulness. It really just comes up with some amazing stuff. And as I expected, both assignments are just delightful and some just amazing side characters. And I just love that I got to do a dungeon crawl in a hospital. That was pretty amazing, and nearly got buried alive. And lastly, I really liked answering the question on the inevitable hour, and I'm just really looking forward to. We're kind of poised to answer some more questions next session, and that's my wish. Is I want to see how that goes, because that's going to be fun.
I honestly, you say that, James, but like one of my wishes was I wish I hadn't introduced a time loop while not remembering what they'd already said in the conversation. Because I was like, oh, it's a time loop, but what the hell? What were the conversation topics?
Yeah, but I like they were both really confused though. Like I like the sort of the discombobulation of it as well.
It was a time loop, but it wasn't like a perfect style time loop where like basically nothing changes every time. Instead, it was like each one was it's like having an ice sculpture and like watching it melt, and then every 5 minutes you carve the same sculpture but like what it looks like now, and so we have to like watch it devolve in real time too, which I thought was really fun to do.
Yeah, and there's a sort of messiness and incompleteness to the time changes. There's nothing tidy about it. Everything's just been a mess, and because it is just chaos, like I think it really works. Like
my big stars are just all of you as usual. Your contributions, you go so hard. When I introduced that first paint the scene, I was like, it's a bit wild asking people to come up with different moments from time. It's very broad, but you just went in so hard, and they were so beautiful, memorable. Answering the question, I love how creative that is, and I can't wait to find out what's going on with this chrono-electrical device that's creating a time loop. The Saint Electric people have created. Awesome. I just loved how dark it got as well, from Vitria's flashback to Dr. Nim irradiating a man's face because he was maybe a bit too vain or just to see what happened. And then even Frank doing a kind of utilitarian for the greater good thing that involved the sacrifice of perhaps the man that could have helped you the most. Yeah, I love the fact that this journey is kind of taking its toll on everyone a little bit. Also, huge star to anyone who runs this, because this was my first time doing now 2 at once, and the incredible back and forth is endless. And obviously the resources are such a great help to that, but it is quite overwhelming at first, and I loved it. And I guess final wishes, I can't wait to see your advancements and what all of you do with those in future.
I decided to pick the Crucible of Change because I've been doing a lot of ritualistic stuff. So this gives me, it's a bit like the Rite of Salt and Smoke from the Between. It's got like, effects and consequences. So I'll give it a go next time.
Yeah, and I grabbed Accomplished Chemist because since we've already established I have a background with mixing things and making things, I now can just make new items for my altar to use. So I'm excited to start making things.
My last star to John is just the options are so rich for taking another move for the Helping Hand faith sheet that I'm having a hard time deciding because they're all very fun things to add to Frank's arsenal.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to, for the first time since I've started doing these actual plays, remember to do a proper sign-off rather than just ending randomly. So yeah, thank you very much for playing, and thank you to anyone who watches this.